Mommy, um, Aldo's daughter, she was in gym. I saw her. Her whole hair was sticking out.
Oh boy, she had bad hair day.
No.
You can't come over here.
Are the mics working right now? I want to see.
No, I have a copy. 17. It's mine. You can have it for right now. Yeah, I just brought it in case they want to discuss it.
Have fun.
Yeah.
Tower of Terror, that's his thing. Tower of Terror.
Good evening, everybody. How's everybody doing? Happy New Year. Welcome to the Marlboro Township School District reorganization meeting for 2023. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Sunshine Law, please be advised that this meeting is being held in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, PL 1975, Sunshine Law, and that adequate notice of the date, time, and agenda has been sent to the Asbury Park Press and the news transcript and has been posted and filed with the Marlboro Township Clerk. Copies have also been sent to each school district and other area newspapers in accordance with the law. I'm not going to read in full, but I want to bring to everybody's attention statement of videotaping of public portion of Board of Education meetings, the public comment statement pursuant to Board Policies 0164 and 0167, and no smoking on school grounds. Can we all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. There are no announcements, but I am going to read the results of the 2022 election. The total votes casted for this election was 35,719. The first highest total votes went to Mrs. Annette Seward with 7,278 votes. The second total was to Mrs. Valentina Mendez with 7,066 votes. And third was Mr. Michael Olonsky with 6,745 votes. Okay, so now with that, we're going to take this time to administer the oaths of office to the new board members. So if you can all please join me up here. So please raise your left hand and put your right hand on the Bible, and please repeat after me. I, please state your name.
I, Valentina Mendez,
Do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear or affirm
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same
and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same
and to the governments established in the United States
and to the governments established in the United States
and this state
and the state
under the authority of the people,
under the authority of the people,
so help me God.
so help me God.
I, please state your name,
I, Valentina Mendez,
do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear or affirm
that I possess the qualifications prescribed by law for the office of member of a Board of Education,
for the office of member of the Board of Education,
am not disqualified as a voter
am not disqualified as a voter
pursuant to RS 19-4-1,
pursuant to RS 19-4-1.
am not disqualified due to conviction of a crime
I am not disqualified due to conviction of a crime
or offense listed in NJSA 18A 12-1,
or offense listed in NJSA 18A 12-1,
and that I will faithfully, impartially, and justly
and that I will faithfully, impartially, and justly
perform all of the duties of that office
perform all the duties of that office
according to the best of my ability,
according to the best of my ability,
so help me God.
so help me God.
Congratulations. You have officially been sworn in, so you are able to take your name tags, find a seat, and take a seat with the Board of Education. Yep, you can sign these.
Are we missing a seat? In? We have 2 seats.
No, cigarette.
Yeah, right here, man. Go ahead. What's that? There you go. Congratulations, my friend. Congratulations. It's a pleasure.
How are we missing a seat? Who's Ramsey? Okay. Oh my.
Okay, congratulations once again. Now we're going to move on to the election of board president. So this is in accordance with bylaw 0152. Mr. Zittimer, if you just want to go over exactly how this is going to work.
Welcome, everybody. So the process will be as follows. Mr. Caravello will open the floor up to nominations for the office of president. A second is not required. Anybody can throw anybody's name into the hat. Once we're finished with the nomination process, somebody should make a motion to close the nominations. Second, discussion, we can do an all in favor. Once the nominations are closed, you should state the name of the candidate who you're supporting for that office, and the person that receives the majority of the votes will be elected the board president. At that point, Mr. Caravello will turn the gavel over to that individual, and we'll repeat the same process for the office of vice president. Does anybody have any questions? No? That's it. So I'll turn it back over to Mr. Caravello.
Okay, so I'm going to open this up for nominations for board president. Mr. Petruno?
I'd like to nominate Kathleen Amster.
Okay, are there any other nominations for board president? Okay, seeing none, can I have a motion to close nominations?
A motion to close.
Second,
Second.
are there any discussion on this? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, motion passes. Congratulations. Oh, hold on. Sorry.
No, that was that. Sorry, that was just to close the nominations. Now we do the roll
My
call
mistake.
on the
We're going to
candidate.
do a roll
That's
call
all right.
now. Sorry. Getting
We
ahead
get
of
to
myself.
clap twice.
Getting
don't
ahead
worry.
of myself. Okay, so now we're going to move to roll call for the president. Just state the name. Yeah, so just state the name of the candidate. Mr. Lewanski,
Kathleen Amster.
Mrs. Mendez,
Kathleen Amster.
Mrs. Amster,
Kathleen Amster.
Mr. Petruno,
Kathleen Amster.
Mrs. Piernick,
Mrs. Amster.
Mrs. Rosado,
Kathleen Amster.
Mrs. Shrem,
Kathleen Amster.
Mrs. Seward,
Kathleen Amster.
and Mrs. Trafasi. Okay, motion passes now.
Okay, I'd like to open up for nominations for vice president. Aldo?
I'd like to nominate Christina Rosado.
Are there any other nominations for vice president? Can I have a motion to close the nominations?
Second.
Okay. Susie?
Moved by Kathleen, seconded by Susan.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No? Okay, roll call for a vote.
Mr. Lewanski,
Christina Rosado.
Mrs. Mendez,
Christina Rosado.
Mr. Petruno,
Christina Rosado.
Mrs. Piernick,
Christina Rosado.
Mrs. Rosado,
Christina Rosado.
Mrs. Shrem,
Christina Rosado.
Mrs. Seward,
Christina Rosado.
Mrs. Trafasi, and Mrs. Amster.
Christina Rosado.
Congratulations.
Good evening, everyone. I'm thrilled to have this opportunity to lead this board, and I'd like to thank my fellow board members for their belief in me to do this job. I know that this will require hard work and dedication, but I am definitely up for this challenge. I would like to let my fellow board members, administration, staff professionals, support staff, and students know that I have one goal, and that is to serve this board to the very best of my ability. I believe in fair play and right versus wrong. I believe that one must never compromise one's integrity. I believe in loyalty and support to the children that this district serves. I believe in respect for all people and the dignity of all human beings. I'd like to thank all the people in our community who have supported me and continue to support me. And to all the parents that have come to the microphone over the past 4 years that I've been on this board, I hear you and I see you. I sit here now as board president, but I began this journey as a very noisy, concerned parent many years ago. This journey is solely due to 5 very important people in my life, my children. They allowed me and encouraged me to step far outside of my comfort zone, and more importantly, their love for me helped me find my voice. And for that, I am eternally grateful. Thank you.
1 year ago, I would have never imagined that I would be nominated or serve as the Board of Ed's Vice President, alongside my fellow board member and friend Kathleen Amster. I stand here today extremely humbled and invigorated at the road ahead and the possibilities that lie before us. I'm hopeful that together we can foster a cohesive board that will collaborate with administration to ensure the students in Marlboro continue to receive instruction that is blue ribbon worthy, and the parents of Marlboro will feel heard, valued, and part of their child's educational process. While I've only been on the board for 1 year, I'm confident that together with Kathleen, we can usher in a respectful and collaborative board that is noteworthy and effective. Kathleen's board experience, with her experience advocating for students with special needs, paired with my experience in education and school administration, will further enhance the district in doing what is intrinsically right for children, academically, socially, and emotionally. Having the experience as a teacher and a parent of children in both general education as well as special education has provided me with the empathy and expertise necessary to consider decisions and policies that impact children and learning. I vow to always do my best and consider every child of every ability and every parent when making decisions that impact them in this district. I thank my husband and my children for their constant love and support of me and the countless hours I spend dedicated to this board and the community. And I thank our supporters and you all for this opportunity. I promise we will govern this board with the honesty, integrity, and transparency that have been and will always be part of our fundamental principles. Thank you.
I'd like to make a motion for a 10-minute recess. Do I have a second?
I second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. The ayes have it. allowed to add old and new business onto this agenda before discuss? Do I have to make a motion, or do I? There is no old and new business on this agenda. There's nothing on this agenda.
And I'm like, oh, I'll just throw it right in. I go, Jill's gonna be sad.
Okay. That's why I'm asking, yeah, before I go at the end. We can go at the end. Okay.
You ready?
It can't go before this, because I think some people may have some
Oh my
questions.
gosh, get out!
Yeah,
Oh my God, like a buy email to Teresa. I didn't turn this one off.
I know.
No. Doesn't turn on.
No, those are the hot mics.
Oh, no,
Wait,
not
did you?
that one. Get No?
Yes.
The last email was
Right.
Oh, really? Oh, because they turned it off, so it couldn't accept the spam. Now you'll get all the spam. Yeah. That's funny. Well, if you ever need to remember anything, it's all there.
Got it.
That's so funny.
Let's call the meeting to order. Then roll call.
Sure. Mr. Olansky,
Here.
Mrs. Mendez,
Here.
Mr. Petruno,
Here.
Ms. Piernick,
Here.
Mrs. Rosato,
Here.
Mrs. Shrem, Mrs. Seward,
Here.
Mrs. Strafasi,
Here.
and Mrs. Amster.
Here. Organizational matters. Like to read? Yes, somebody like to read? Susie, organizational matters.
I think I lost that page. Hold on. What? Oh, okay, I see it, thank you, sorry. The superintendent of schools submits the following resolutions for approval. 1, attendance officer. 2, affirmative action officer, school and classroom practices. 3, affirmative action officer, employment practices. 4, district section 504 coordinator. 5, title IX coordinator.
Title
6,
9.
what?
Title 9.
9, thank
Okay.
you. Title IX coordinator. 6, meeting schedule. 7, committee of the whole and regular public meeting dates. 8, form of agenda, workshop meeting. 9, form of agenda, regular meeting. I so move.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Discussion? Christina?
I just had a question regarding the meeting dates. Are we able, is that like set in stone to always have the second and the third Tuesday, or can we like change it to the second and the fourth? Is that something that's, is that a discussion, like something?
Yeah, that would be a discussion.
Okay, does anybody want to discuss moving to the second and fourth?
No, I like it. I kind of feel like we always had the second and the fourth. It always feels like it's every 2 weeks.
Susan, I can't hear you.
No, all I was saying was I just, for some reason, I thought it was already every other
Other.
week. I didn't think it was back to back. So, but no, second and fourth sounds good.
I feel like there were some months, you're right, where it was second and fourth, but then there were
Right.
other months where it was back to back. And
Yeah.
Dr. Hibbs, is there a reason why it's not, it's just because of holidays, or?
Yeah, I think we usually typically aim for second and fourth, and then there might be an extenuating circumstance with that calendar month that would prohibit that.
Okay, so usually it is the second and the fourth?
Yes.
Okay.
like Thanksgiving, that was a problem.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Any other discussions?
I had a question. I just wanted to understand, are these new titles for them? On number 1, I guess, organization matters. So for example, if they were assistant superintendent of schools and now it's also affirmative action officer, what's the difference in these titles? Is there anything? Is it just what is that?
No, there's nothing new on here. So Michael before would have been on here just as a director of curriculum, and now his title changed, so that would have changed, for instance, in number 2. Am I right? I think that's what you're referring to? As an example?
Yes, and the other example is, well, really all of them, but example is Dr. Blair. She's now being appointed to Section 504
Yep.
coordinator. Is that just a change in her title?
No. No, that's just an extra duty that she would have, as a part of reorganization. She would be the 504 officer. She's the person in charge of 504, the 504 plans.
Yeah, so these are just district-appointed liaisons for the district to represent the district in these specific categories.
So they'll do their regular job, and then these are some things that are in addition to what they're already doing.
Correct.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Is there additional compensation that goes with these? or-
No, these are just titles.
Okay.
But isn't Dr. Blair already the Section 5 coordinator, and isn't Mr. Balone already the
Yep, so
affirmative
this
action
is the
officer?
reorg meeting, so annually we reapprove these for the year, the calendar year.
Any other discussion? Christina?
I also had a question, and again, I was just looking at the form of agenda with workshop meetings or regular meetings. I don't even know if this should be addressed here or somewhere else, but I guess you can let me know. If we have any presentations, like Vinny, Mr. Balone, Dr. Hibbs, if anybody had like a presentation that you're going to give, whether it be on data, is there any way that we can get that data like with the agenda ahead of time, like the public would be able to see the data ahead of the meeting as well as the board members? Because sometimes I know like when you're presenting, you have so many facts and it's hard for myself. I know some people, the parents, they're trying to take screenshots to see the data so that they can maybe formulate questions or process it. Is that possible that we are able to have that data ahead of time with the agenda before a board meeting?
I think if time determines it, sure, absolutely.
Okay.
If it's a pressing presentation, then maybe not. But if it's something that we had a lot of leeway time on, sure, we could do that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, roll call.
Mr. Lolansky?
Yes.
Mrs. Mendez?
Yes.
Mr. Petruno?
Yes.
Mrs. Piernick?
Yes.
Mrs. Rosado?
Yes.
Mrs. Seward?
Yes.
Mrs. Trefasi?
Yes.
Mrs. Shrem?
Yes.
And Mrs. Amster?
Yes. Financial and business operations matter? Annette?
The superintendent of schools submits the following resolutions for approval. 1, banking institutions signatories. 2, approval of depositories. 3, petty cash accountants. 4, authorized signatures. I so move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Just,
Aldo?
yeah, just a question. Actually, disregard it. I was wondering about the president and vice president signing, but I see it here.
Any other questions? I see none. Jen?
Mr. Shrem?
Yes.
Mr. Lolansky?
Yes.
Mrs. Mendez?
Yes.
Mr. Petruno?
Yes.
Mrs. Piernick?
Yes.
Mrs. Trefasi?
Yes.
Mrs. Rosado?
Yes.
Mrs. Seward?
Yes.
And Mrs. Amster?
Yes. Policy development and community relations matters? Val?
The superintendent of schools submits the following resolution for approval. Governance manual. I so move.
Any discussion? Second, do I have a second? Mike?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, I see none. Roll call.
Roll call vote. Mr. Petruno?
Yes.
Mrs. Piernick?
Yes.
Mrs. Rosado?
Yes.
Mrs. Shrem?
Yes.
Mrs. Seward,
Yes.
Mrs. Strafasi,
Yes.
Mr. Lolansky,
Yes.
Mrs. Mendez,
Yes.
and Mrs. Amster.
Yes. Before we get to public comments, I'd like to bring up some either, anybody has new or old business to bring up?
I have some old business, if you don't mind.
Yep, Michael?
So I sat through the last meeting where we discussed the first budget proposals, and I saw what you all saw, that we have a daunting budget coming up ahead of us. Dr. Hibbs and the rest of the board, I was wondering, in the past, at our budget meetings, we would bring, Dr. Hibbs would select a representative from each major group, say buildings and grounds, transportation, technology, and so forth, and they would present that position to the board. Not that Vinny can't do an excellent job, but I feel like if each department is there that has a major role in our budget, it makes it a lot easier for the board members to ask questions directly and get answers on the spot, and makes it easier to pass a budget. I just feel that way was a lot simpler and easier. If we can, as a board, discuss and maybe go back to doing it that way, sir.
Christina?
So can I just add, sure. Michael, so are you saying then, so instead of Vinny, like he normally presents the budget, each head of, like each division of the district would come and present why they need X amount of funds and the reasoning behind it so we can have a back and forth discussion with them about it and clarification?
And not so much the head, but Dr. Hibbs choosing which representative from each section would come.
Okay.
It may not be the head, it might be somebody else. Not that Vin couldn't do an excellent job, but he did the opening, which he should do, and it's appropriate. And then I think going forward at each meeting, as quick as we can get them done, because the budget time is coming quicker than you think, that we can have those discussions with, like you said, back and forth with each area.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to go back and watch older meetings, and when, Michael, you were there, and it was done that way, and it did seem to run, smoothly. It was good, I thought it was a good point.
Just think it helps the budget to pass and get more buy-in for the board members.
Right. Any other, is that good?
Yeah. The only thing I would ask is, for money questions, I think that should be a Vin thing.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have a question on, for instance, if Mike Crivelli comes and you say, well, why do we have X $100,000 in pavement, Mike could talk intelligently about the cracks. I would just ask that all money stuff would go to Vin, and then ancillary questions go to the department heads.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
I have a question too, but I don't know if it's old or new, but it's related. The stabilization aid, how is that going to work into our budget questions? And I'm so happy that we got the stabilization aid.
So that actually is on an accrual basis, so it's actually just going to go into this year's budget, and we are able to start spending it based off of what the application stated. Now, the application was for the purchase of buses and also the purchase of active panels district-wide. This is actually going to free up a lot of leeway in the budget to try to create some relief, what I had presented in the past meeting of all the crunches we're going to be facing. So we're actually able to, spearhead this early rather than have to continually budget for it in the future, so it actually free up some cap space per se.
And I want to thank you, because you're the one who did that application, correct? Like, kudos to you.
Yep, thank you. Myself
Nice
and
job,
Chris
Ben.
doing
No,
too.
seriously, like, we have a great business district, because as a parent, I'm speaking as a parent, not as a board member, like, I don't know if everyone knows, like, Freehold Regional School District didn't get nearly what we got, and that's a big school district, so I'm thrilled, I'm sad for Freehold Regional as a Freehold Regional parent, but I'm thrilled for Marlboro that we were able to secure that money, so good for you, Vin, like, that's
Thank
a
you.
feather in your cap, good for
Yeah,
you.
so once we get more details on how the money's going to come in, I will let the board know exactly the specific plan and how we're going to go about doing that, but it does go in this year's budget, not next year's.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. For those who don't know, it was approximately $2.1 million that we were awarded. Good job, Vin.
Thank you.
And Chris.
And Chris, congratulations.
Does anybody have any objections or any other questions if we did go forward with presenting the budget that way, as opposed to?
No, I think it's a good idea. I mean, more information is always better in my eyes. So is that going to be like one presentation per tab in the binder, basically? Is that how it works? Or?
The binders are created by department. I had a few meetings with some of you last year when you came in personally to talk about the budget by department and go line by line with it. So basically that would just be on a grander scale or broken out by department.
Right.
We just have to be mindful, state aid doesn't come out till the end of February, so whatever's presented by a department could change depending on what our numbers are and if we have to cut or if we can add anything. Also, I want to be mindful of their time too as department heads, knowing that they have to get up the next day and actually come in and serve the district. So I know in the past it could have gone for a while. I just want to be mindful of if we do have that, then that we're mindful of their time as well.
Okay. Any other new or?
I have new business I'd like to discuss. It's just something that's been weighing on me personally. I was hoping that we could move forward with finding a third-party surveyor for the district surveys, and also for the results of the surveys to be made public to the board. There were surveys that went out throughout the year, and as someone on the other side of the table, it would have just been helpful if we saw the results. So I was hoping that maybe we could find something that's both budget-friendly and neutral to conduct surveys moving forward.
So it's interesting that you said that, because now I was thinking of just speaking to people I know on other boards. They have like data committees where there's like a representative from the board that works alongside with administration to analyze the data that the district collects, and then like basically look at like the trends and make informed decisions that way and report out. So I was wondering if that could be a possible committee, just like a data and development committee going forward.
Would that be instead of a certain committee?
Could also Christina be part of possibly communications?
It could be part of
Right?
communications, I guess. It could be possibly part of communications, like, because it sounds
a layer.
like in that vein, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, I just wanted
Maybe we
to...
could kick it back to the,
Yeah, we could discuss it at a later point.
Yeah, we could discuss
That's
it.
something
Yeah,
to think about.
yeah, something to think about.
Thank you.
Okay.
I have one other thing.
Yeah, Michael?
Yeah, the survey brought to my mind the town hall meetings that the previous board were discussing. I'm just wondering why there was even a need for a survey. Why, if it's on a Tuesday night and everybody is present, it just can't be the same topics that are allowed at a regular board meeting. Everybody knows we don't talk about safety and security, we don't talk about personnel, et cetera. Set those ground rules, and when the questions pertains to the board, what president will answer them. When it pertains to administration, you would direct the superintendent to decide how it gets answered. I don't see why there has to be parameters.
Yeah,
If
it
we're
sounds
really
like to
doing a
be-
true town meeting, hall meeting, it should be open to any discussion that the board would normally have, and all the taboo subjects are just taboo.
I agree.
I agree also. It was a little off-putting to see each one of the concerns already pre-bulleted, instead of maybe someone that was coming who was, speaking from the heart or with a concern of their own that wasn't comfortable necessarily submitting to a survey. But I agree.
I mean, we're doing a town hall meeting, the purpose of a town hall meeting is to give a chance for back and forth that you don't get at a board meeting, right?
Right.
And as long as we state the taboo subjects, safety and security,
Correct.
personnel, things of that nature, I think everything else, that you can speak at the microphone at a board meeting should be fair,
Right.
fair
No.
game.
That's fine. Something we talked about in the meeting, and Aldo, you were there, so feel free to jump in, was that whoever the administrator is or whoever's here answering those questions on specific topics, if it's broad, then we won't have answers right away. And something
Well,
that...
I think that's understandable, like if it's a
Yeah.
numbers question, I don't think any rational person is gonna expect any other human being to pull a number out of the air. I think that's just common sense, but if it's a question that's answerable in the moment,
Yeah,
then I
of
think,
course.
then it's answerable.
I remember what you're talking about too, Jess. I think, and if I could be wrong, but if I'm understanding what Mike is saying, basically, rather than specific questions, just that it's open to any topic, even if it wasn't on the list, as long as it's not one of the topics that can't be discussed publicly.
Right.
Which I personally think is a good idea.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Maybe,
So why don't we just reform it back to the communications committee under that premise and get it scheduled?
yeah,
Great.
that sounds good.
Thank you.
Any other, new business?
I had old business.
Oh, old
I know,
business,
we
I'm
just
sorry.
jumped over to new for a moment. Yeah, for old business, in last meeting, everybody was discussing ESY, and then it was tabled, and I just didn't know when that would be brought up again. And so I just have a few questions before we have to vote on it, and I'm not sure if that's going to be brought up today, but I did have some questions. So are we talking about that today?
No, that will be on the January for discussion.
Okay.
But if you give me those questions earlier, it allows us an opportunity to prepare for them.
Yeah, just a few things that I was thinking about when I was sitting over there is just some historical data. So before voting, so in advance of that meeting, I would love it if we could take a look at 3 to 5 years worth of attendance, right? I understand in the last meeting it was stated that we didn't have enough attendance to hold it for the 6-week or however many week time period. And so that historical data will help to provide clarity so I can vote. And the other thing we talked about, you all talked about, was staffing. And so was it posed to the staff? Did we already ask them if they're available? Can we find a way so that we can have it for those students for the appropriate amount of time, right? And so I understand staffing may be an issue in August, right? I know that came up, that people are taking vacation, but I don't want that to stop us from providing the students what they need. And so if we could just take a look at staffing and how we can make that doable for students, you know, I understand.
Is that something that ESS could get involved with as well? Like if we needed staffing for ESY?
I don't think so. I'd have to go back and roundtable that one. You're going to pull random people in to fill what would happen through an IEP, which
Right,
is
you
just
can.
probably not going to work. But I no problem. I can pull out the 3 to 5 years worth of attendance and then staffing. And we've already had discussions with Dr. Blair about how to add days. So we're going to come back in January, and I'll have that data for you with a proposal for how many days.
Thank you.
I'm also going to give you the last 3 to 5 years of how many days we did as well, because I think that's important as well.
Thank you. And you know, something else is that what the program includes. So I think that's helpful, I think, for people to see is, you know, I'm assuming it's different grade levels and what the structure of the program would look like, you know, would be helpful too.
Dr. Blair and staff here will go all through this through a presentation.
Thank you.
Which I'll try to get you first.
Thank you.
Any other new business, old business? Aldo?
Yeah, I had, so I actually just speaking of when you guys were mentioning ESY and, you know, IEPs and all that, I just had a question as far as, I know, like, when we have our meetings, I'm not sure who's, you know, I'm not sure who's from the administration required to attend, but I feel like we do get a lot of questions from the community about special education and things of that sort. Would it be possible for, at least at the regular meetings, could we have Dr. Blair present going forward so that she's on hand to answer any questions that may come up in that area?
If that's what the board would like, sure, I could ask her.
Yeah.
I think that would be a great idea.
Anybody else want to weigh in?
I'm sorry, did you, oh, sorry. Did you ask for her to attend all of our
No,
future meetings?
just regular?
I'm assuming just the
All of our
regular
regular
meetings would make
meetings?
sense. You know, unless there's a specific meeting, like, you know, a workshop where special ed's
Right.
being discussed and she would, you know, need, but, you know, not like, for instance, like having Vinny here, you know, he's able to spit numbers out, like right off the top of his head, he's got the info. You know, having Paul and Mike here, like, it helps to get the information needed to keep the conversation going. And I think with, you know, questions that come up for special ed, having Dr. Blair here would do the same thing and, you know, just keep the conversation fluid.
Right.
Even if it's not Dr. Blair, there's 2 supervisors of special ed, so even if they rotated,
Yeah, I mean, I'd prefer to have Dr. Blair. But
Yeah, she's in charge, right?
or if she's not available to come, then at least one of them can fill her spot so that they can answer our questions.
Yeah, I mean, I'd prefer to have Dr. Blair.
I mean,
I think if she can, if Dr. Blair can be here, I think that'd be great. And in this circumstance, she can't, at least a representative.
Right. Yeah, I agree. Any other new business?
Are we, yes, do you want to? Can I
Sure.
do a new business? The, for the professional services, all, like, not, I wanted to see if we could put out an RFP for the professional services that we do use within the district. I don't want to go too broad and put too much work on you, Vin, because I know that they require probably, you know, I'm sure that there's, you know, a good amount of work that goes into putting them out. But I know the food service was just done, so I don't think that's really.
Yeah, the food service is not an RFP, it's usually a bid. Usually we go out every 3 to 5 years.
Okay,
for that.
and that was just last year, but then, like, you know, I think if we could possibly do, what other professional services are there? We have, like, the auditor, the
You have
insurance, the attorney.
You have auditor, you have insurance broker, you have attorney, you have school physician.
Is the school
Health
physician
broker.
on an annual?
School physician we just did, I believe, last year, 2 years ago.
Okay.
We
Is
were
that
rec-
an annual contract, or is that?
Usually they're recommended by the county to go out every 3 years, 3 to 5. If you're happy with them, there is no cardinal rule of having to go out.
Okay.
They just recommend every 3 to 5, which we try to do unless we're satisfied with the service. The physician, we just did. The auditor, I believe, was just done right before I started, and the same thing with the attorney.
Okay. Can we do the auditor, the attorney, and the insurance? That was it. Yeah. Now, insurance. Do we do both, like our casualty, property and casualty,
Yep,
and health?
everything's together: umbrella, general liability, auto. It's all
What
under
about
one
like
umbrella.
the health insurance and stuff? Is that all done, or is that?
That's actually, we have to go out this year for that. That's was already on the schedule. It's the health broker.
Okay. Yeah, so if we could do those four then, the four that I had just mentioned, what's the time frame on those typically? Like, how long until we would be able to have that done?
I believe usually it's a minimum of 14 days, 10 to 14 days that you have to have them advertised, and then after you get everything in, usually you can formulate a committee, or it could be brought back to the board as a whole of what we received from different companies, different vendors, and then if the board wants to make a selection, I would make a recommendation. If the board would want to approve it, then they would approve it at a board meeting.
So is it reasonable to try and get that for
Aldo,
February's meeting?
I think you have to make a motion for
Oh,
that,
okay.
for those three if you want. So if you want to make the motion and.
Yeah, can I make a motion then to put out an RFP for the insurance, the attorney, and the auditor?
Can I ask a question before we go into the motion? I just want to understand. So
Yes. Motion.
And then vote? Okay.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Christina, for a second. Okay, discussion?
Okay, thank you. So insurance, I missed what you had said. When was insurance done last? And how often do you do that?
Insurance broker has not been done in a while, I believe, because I think we usually do it every 3 to 5 years, but it's been way before I was here because we've had the same insurance broker for a while now.
Okay, and then same question for attorney?
Attorney was done right before I was here, so I believe 2019 is when the existing board at that time asked to get an RFP.
Okay, and then auditor?
Same time frame. I think it was around 2019.
Around 2019. And were we doing school physician or no?
We just did that.
We just did that.
That
We
and
just
food
did that.
services
Okay,
were
so
just
it's
done.
Okay,
And
so
health
it's
broker we were doing already this coming
health
April.
broker we're already doing. So it's just
Those-
insurance, attorney, and auditor, and basically we're doing that because they haven't been done in a number of years.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, just need to understand.
Jessica?
Can we interview, like, I know you're gonna make a recommendation, but then what happens, like, are we allowed to ask questions of, like, an auditor or an attorney or insurance, like, what are the protocols? Like, what if we have questions about who we're choosing?
Yeah, so when you get all the RFPs in, you'll probably want to do like some sort of evaluation matrix based off of price, experience, relativeness to like our size districts. You would put your certain bidder qualifications in there, what you want them to meet. Once they meet those and we go through them, you can set up a committee to go through them because all these professionals work for the board and the administration works with them. So you can set up a committee to go through them or a committee as a whole. Mr. Wolonsky?
I would just suggest committee of the whole, because every board member has a stake in this.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I agree.
So you could do that as a whole, and then the ones that that submit, you can have them come in. And I don't know if it's done in public or executive, but I believe it would be done in public session.
How'd you do it last time, Mr. Lonsky?
Committee of the whole,
In public or?
in public.
Okay,
Okay.
yeah. We can follow that same path.
If,
Okay.
I mean, assuming the motion passes, would it be reasonable to expect, like, to think we could have the results from the RFP by the February meeting?
What date was the February meeting for? It was,
14th?
Well, if it's the second week, so it's gotta be roughly.
I mean, by the next meeting, you would want them to submit, then you would want to interview them in public as a committee as a whole. You may not have a decision right there who you want to appoint, so you may want to do it at a following meeting. I mean, you can get these on the street and advertise these as fast as possible, but once they're submitted and the bid deadline's closed, it's closed. Whatever's submitted is what we would review.
Right. I'm sorry. No, that's what I meant. Do you think it's reasonable to expect to have the proposal results by the February meeting?
Yeah, I would just have to get on that and advertise them immediately.
Okay.
Yeah, if possible, if the motion does pass, if possible, that would be.
Tuesday would be the 7th.
Any discussion about this?
The only thing I'd add, Aldo, you want to leave time between the discussions because you want to have a meaningful discussion with each group each night. You don't want to have 3 different groups in here in February meeting. It's a lot. You want to give it due time and do discussion. So once you get your results back in and the board decides who they want to see, then I wouldn't make each one the same meeting. We'll put it over time.
Yeah, I think it would be a little bit overkill. What you could do is you could go out and advertise the RFP, and then when the RFP date is closed, you have your submissions. You start going through them, and we'll schedule them for a committee as a whole, and then you would be able to, whether you want to discuss in public or executive, who you want to actually proceed with. And the next meeting you would, or a following meeting after that, you would put them on for approval.
Okay.
You can put in the RFP too, whether you award within 60 days, 90 days, really can tailor it.
Any other discussion for this, Jessica?
So we're voting on to making a motion if we're going to put our RFPs, but so are we going to discuss right now what we're putting out first and what those days will entail?
Well, I think the motion was to put out insurance, attorney, and auditor.
Right, but are we putting out all 3 at once, like Mr. Lalonde?
You can put out 3 at once, but then when you get your answer, decide in what order you're going to bring them to the board.
Got it.
Yeah, they're
Okay.
3 separate RFPs, so you'll have 3 separate submissions that we'd have to go through.
Any other discussion on this?
I mean, that was it from me.
I see none. Can we do the roll call vote?
Sure. Mr. Lewandowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Mendez?
Yes.
Mr. Petrino?
Yes.
Mrs. Piernick?
Yes.
Mrs. Rosado?
Yes.
Mrs. Shrem?
Yes.
Mrs. Seward?
Yes.
Mrs. Trefasi?
Yes.
And Mrs. Amster?
Yes. Okay, I'm new to this, sorry. We're going to have a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Everybody second.
Oh, public comments, I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, I apologize. I asked Mark, sorry.
It's Mark's fault.
Let's open up public comments.
Sure. First on the list is Mr. Seth Amster.
Kind of lost my thunder because everybody already said everything. But this has nothing to do with board business. This has to do with congratulating Kathleen and Christina, as well as the new board members for winning your elections. As you know, or as you may have realized, I'm Kathleen's husband. We've been married for 26 years now, and it's been quite a ride so far. I've been perhaps to a dozen meetings over the last 5 years, and I've left the talking up to Kathleen. For all who know her, it is not something she shies away from. Kathleen started this journey like I suspect many public figures do, in their kitchen, talking to other moms about what they saw as issues with their children in this district. Kathleen did what many talk about but often don't do, and started to confront those inequities here. She was not deterred by being dismissed or ignored. She was emboldened to take action and run for election. It would be an understatement to suggest that her initial time here on the board was difficult. There were many times of her questioning her role and what good she was doing. Her determination was strengthened every time a parent from our community came to her and asked her to keep fighting for their child and all the children here in this district. Those of you, well, I'm not going to say that. Certainly, I'd like to take this occasion to keep it simple. Kathleen, you have been and always have been an inspiration to your children, myself, and obviously the countless parents and children of this community. Keep up the good work, and as always, you have my full support.
He forgot to state his name and where he lived, so he didn't make it.
Okay, next up is Mrs. Bonnie Gamazon.
Bonnie Gabazon, Marlboro, New Jersey. First of all, big congratulations to our new board members. Big congratulations to our new president and vice president. I think we're in really good hands. I am excited. I have a question that I don't believe has been brought up before. My question is about educational foundations. I know they are common throughout New Jersey school districts. I know Marlboro has the Marlboro Educational Foundation, and they do wonderful fundraising and put on great events for the community. My question is about what is the process of gifts that are donated to our schools? I was under the impression typically that it was physical items, gym equipment, friendship benches, that kind of stuff. And I believe that now that there have been gifts that have can be considered maybe crossing over into curriculum or programs. And I would like to know if those gifts are vetted the way that curriculum is voted on by the board. Thank you.
And next up is Mr. Paul Finns.
First, I'd like to congratulate all the new members and those that are still here. Hopefully, maybe we'll cut some strings. Unfortunately, this district has not been performing as it should. It's top-heavy as far as number of supervisors that don't teach. When you think about it, if a supervisor's making $150,000, you could probably hire 10 teacher assistants for that one supervisor. The other problem that this district seems to have is the amount of money being spent by attorneys that are fighting parents that are trying to get their children into special programs. 6 years ago, it was $400,000 that was being spent. I'd like to know what's being spent today and how is it being spent? Is it spent fighting parents who are trying to get their children the necessary things? Or is it just to protect the board members to sit at a meeting? I'd like to see some adjustments made, and hopefully this district will turn around in the next couple of years with the right people at the helm. Thank you.
Next up is Mrs. Deborah Van Edom. Okay. Mrs. Dana Verga.
Dana Verga, Municipal Drive, Marlboro. Okay. So I want to first start off by congratulating our new members. I have no doubt that you will bring a fresh and innovative perspective to our board. Each of you bring your own unique strengths to the table. I cannot wait to watch you shine. And that goes for everybody. I know you all sit up there and you have the most purest intent. Nobody goes up there for the fame and the glory. So thank you all for being here. Kathleen, Christina, I could not think of two more deserving people. You both have the drive, the heart, the intelligence, and most of all, you're fair. I know that you will excel in your new roles. I actually came up here tonight to talk about an incredible human moment and to give Marl some love. Yay, Marl. First, I want to thank Mrs. York. I called her in a pinch because my daughter had gotten into the LEAP program for math but didn't qualify for reading. And of course, I was a bundle of nerves and a mess because even though she's doing well in her grades, I see her struggle daily. And so with one phone call, I felt like she heard me, she saw me, and by the end of the conversation, she got my daughter into the both reading and math LEAP programs. So I just want to let her know that I'm eternally grateful. And lastly, I want to give a huge shout out to our building principal, Mr. Schatz. Heroes are extraordinary people who make themselves extraordinary. To give a little backstory, I have a child that has really bad emotional meltdowns that sometimes it's impossible to pull her out of. Any ordinary adult tries to calm her, but he went above and beyond, went into her room, pulled her out of the class, and allowed her to walk the halls with him, see his office, go talk to the librarian, and was able to turn her day from something that could have been very traumatic into a great one that she still talks about today. So thank you to our amazing staff at Morrell. Thank you.
Next up is Mr. Leo Davelman.
Is this the first public session or the second?
Only one on the agenda.
Okay. Quickly combining two speeches. Leo Davelman, 51 Buttonwood Drive, Marlboro. Huge congratulations to the newly sworn in board members. I started coming here a while ago, but really 2 years ago, came here as part of a fairly large group of concerned parents who felt like we just couldn't get the time of day, right? So after a year of hard work and growth and learning for me and for many people here on the dais and back in the audience, we had 3 new board members, we celebrated, and we certainly had your attention, but turns out that we didn't get a whole lot of respect with that. And we've talked a lot about some of the comments that were made over this past contentious year. Now, 6 of the folks who started the journey 2 years ago sit on the board, and I have great confidence, at least based on what I heard here today, that we will now have your attention and respect, as it should be. Parents are partners with educators when it comes to public education. It's incredibly important. I think all of you being professionals in public education know very well that no amount of resources, money, staff can make any difference at all in educational outcomes without parental involvement and partnership with parents. That carries throughout. That's at every level, and certainly at Board of Education level. So looking forward to much more of a cooperation, much more of a partnership. There are lots and lots of big issues to work on. We all look for better ways to work. You guys, I'm sure, will organize great new ways of doing things. I look forward to learning them. I have my small issues of a concerned parent that I would love to bring to you and ask you to help us with. First and foremost on my mind, something hopefully we can deal with immediately. I've all run out of time, but important for you to know this. On March 8th, Ms. Sasha Grant stood up here and made a very compelling presentation about the harm of the backpack ban at MMS. She was applauded. She was an inspiration for my daughter who wanted to get involved in student government after hearing about that. She made a tremendous difference and everybody here applauded her. I'm not sure you guys know that the changes to policy that were introduced on March 18th and applauded here on March 22nd were quietly rolled back this summer, and book bags are banned again for, as far as I can tell, completely arbitrary reasons. I would like to work with you to make sure that this particular policy is rescinded as a matter of policy. It is very important that our administrators focus on what's important for education and not on managing the backpacks that our children wear. Parents can decide what's the best way for children to carry their books. I'd love to talk to you guys more about it. Thank you.
Next up is Mrs. Carrie Jankowski.
Hi, Carrie Jankowski, 25 Whitman Road. I'm talking right now as a parent. First, congratulations to all the new board members. Way to go. I had a question that wasn't planned for, but when you, Ms. Mendez, were talking about the data for ESY, it sparked some questions in my head.
So you said that you wanted to collect the data to talk about the ESY because it's on the next board agenda, and you wanted 3 to 4 years. So part of the reason that ESY is being discussed is because lack of enrollment. So if you're going to receive the data early, maybe keep some of these questions in mind, because I don't know the answers either. Have the parameters for qualifying students for ESY changed? And if so, could that have affected the turnout for ESY? So for example, if the parameters were 5 years ago, students had to be 1 year below grade level, and then it changed to 3 years below grade level, and that meant 100 less students were going to be qualifying. Will that look like in your data 100 less students were attending and that they weren't interested? So that's one question. Second, I don't know honestly what our district does, but is there consideration that possibly it can be split? So if ESY is 4 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, for example, can we split it 2 days for literacy retention, 2 days for math retention? And some students might qualify for all 4 days. Therefore, if the problem is finding staff and you have more students that qualify for literacy retention and more students attend Monday, Tuesday, maybe more teachers would want to take just Wednesday, Thursday because it's less on them. They don't have to commit to 4 days. Just an idea. And then you have students that might qualify for all 4 days. And then do you offer specialized programs? So SRA, Read 180, Systems 44, maybe students that go just for foundations. Do you offer ESY strictly for services or social skills that might only need 1 day? You're going to come Wednesdays and we're going to focus on social skills in that day, and also that can help you juggle the necessity for staff and then possibly solve the problem for not finding enough staff because they're just signed up to come on Wednesdays to teach social skills. It's a passion that they have. Sometimes if you reach a teacher on their passionate level, it's that impetus to commit themselves over the summer, and who knows. So I think those are all my questions, but in regards to the data and the numbers, have the parameters for qualifying students for ESY changed? And if so, if we expand those qualifications, would it expand the opportunity for students to come to ESY, therefore generating a more successful ESY if that's the issues? Yeah, that's my question. Thank you.
Thank you.
I added those questions to the previous questions.
Mrs. Amster, that's everyone on my list.
I make a motion to close, close public comments. Do I have a second? All those in favor, discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
You guys have it?
Ayes have it.
Can I just, I apologize, I probably should have brought this up earlier, but it didn't occur to me until we were just doing public comment, but a lot of great comments tonight. Thank you everyone who came up. A lot of great questions as well. I try to take notes as everyone's writing, but do you think that it would be possible, or I don't know if I would have to make a motion, but could we revert back to answering the person who just spoke rather than waiting till the end? Because I'm losing a lot.
I agree, Aldo, just because I'm trying to take notes on everything that everybody was saying, and I just think that answering them in the moment would just help them, and it would just keep it fresh in our minds to address it as well. And I remember when I was standing there, it would just help me if it was answered then. Michael?
I'd just say that's the way, when I was on the board, that's the way we did it, and I felt it was a much better, more respectful way.
Yeah.
The only thing I would, the only thing I'd mention, I think one of the reasons we went into this system was because it became difficult to manage the clock. It became a discussion back and forth, and then the public would rightly say, of the 3 minutes, you just took 2 minutes, and it ended up being, so it's a fine idea, but maybe we say that, are you done with your comments, and then we respond, so it doesn't end up kind of trampling into the 3 minutes or whatever you guys decide.
Would we be able to allow the public to speak, let's say they're 3 minutes? Obviously, if they're finishing up a thought, I mean, within parameters, you could go over the 3 minutes just to let someone.
Doesn't our policy read that it's also up to the board president purview if they can extend past the 3 minutes?
I'd have to check off the top of my head. The 3 minutes is a number we came up with.
Right. 5, right.
Yeah, I mean, I personally, I just, like, like, everyone that just came up had great questions, but now, like, to go, you know, as I'm going back, I'm like, man, you know, I got Carrie, I got
Bless you.
Leo, you know.
I have a question.
Carrie.
Yeah. But, yeah, you know.
And could we also allow, I mean, again, I don't know, but could we allow, let's say, so a community member comes and they have their 3 minutes, and then either a board member or administration can speak with them. Could we allow them a follow-up question? Not a back and forth, but allow them to have a follow-up question, so, you know, maybe something wasn't addressed or they need to clarify,
Right.
just like
Yeah.
one clarifying follow-up?
Yeah, a
just,
lot of times.
just give them like an extra minute after their question
Yeah.
is.
follow-up.
I've been on that side of the microphone
you
a
might
long
not even
time.
it might not even need like a whole minute. It's just like when I see sometimes that it turns into frustration with parents when something gets misconstrued and the question gets completely lost in translation, where one sentence could just, you know, drive it home to what
Yeah,
the
I
point
personally
they
have
were
had
trying to
moments
make.
where my question was misunderstood and the
Yeah.
response from the board wasn't even an answer to the question I was trying to present. So
Yeah,
I
no,
would,
I agree.
I know
I
as a
mean,
community member would appreciate an extra minute after, just for
Agreed.
not so much of a back and forth,
Right.
so to
Right.
speak, an argument, but at
Right.
least just
I think we'd have to just
clarification.
outline that it remained always that, you know, it was respectful on all sides, right, for all of us, and then we didn't go back and forth too long.
Yeah, we have a lot of discretion. We have a public participation policy that kind of sets forth the parameters. I think in Marlboro, we used to actually allow a 1-minute response time. I think that, you may remember
Yeah.
that. I think we used to have that.
And, can I?
So
And
are
as-
we-
and-
oh,
go
sorry.
ahead. So, as well, also in the bylaws, the president runs the meeting, so the president could say only 2 people were signed up to talk. Say you have 5 minutes. It doesn't have to be 3 minutes. It could be depending on how many people are talking that night, just to keep executive session, public session in a proper time frame. The president would say, well, tonight's only 2 people, don't worry about the 3 minutes, you have 5 minutes. And this,
Yeah.
we did put that in notes as well, so that when those nights come, and there's other nights when the room is filled, it has to be 3 minutes.
Right.
As long as you're the same for everybody.
That'd be great.
So, okay, so to sum it up, just to make sure I understand, so what we're saying is 3 minutes or creating a sliding scale. So if there's 10 questions, it's 3 minutes. If there's 4 questions, it can go, 4 or 5 minutes. So we'll-
People.
Oh, sorry,
individuals.
comments. I meant comments, sorry, thank you. So we're gonna create a sliding scale, then we'll have the time limit, then we'll respond back. So they'll speak, we'll respond, and then we give them 1 minute after if they have something else to say.
Follow-up.
Right.
And then I guess then we could have a follow-up comment, and then
That's it.
go to the next.
Yeah.
Okay.
And even like with the sliding scale, I don't need to see like a sliding scale per se.
Right.
I'm fine, at the discretion of the president. I just want to be able to understand where the community member's coming from with their comment and, make sure, one, that we can respond, right after they ask it, so so the conversation's still fresh. And also, just so that nothing gets misconstrued from what they were asking. Because, a lot of times when you ask a question and then 6 comments later you go back to get an answer, a lot of it gets lost when you get the response, and, I could see that being frustrating. So, do I have to make a motion for that, or is that?
What I would suggest, since we already have a policy on the books, is I would kick this back to the policy committee to have them come up with some recommendations that the board can vote on. I think that's the best way to handle it.
Makes sense.
Any other questions? Yeah, sure.
Being that we don't have the committees set yet, would it make more sense to just hammer it out now on what you want?
Well, I mean, I apologize, I don't mean to speak over you.
I mean, I prefer to hammer it out now because it's gonna be
Yeah,
honest
I
with you,
mean-
it might
I
take me
agree.
a few weeks to hammer out the committees once I have
So,
to Google.
and couldn't we
Maybe
just
just
couldn't we just apply this to the,
Why don't we just revert back to answering the questions now, and then all the stuff that we would have to change about the minute and the question, we can do that with the policy. All right, so can I make a motion to change the public comment, the way we handle the public comments, so that each comment gets a response right after it's finished, instead of waiting till the end?
Do I have?
And I'm sorry, I just want to clarify, and also that the community member has the ability to ask
A follow-up
question if they'd like.
Right.
Right?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's fine.
I second that.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Real quick, after they ask, I'm so sorry, it's been a long day. After they ask the second question, we can respond again, correct? Okay, thanks. I know it's not enough.
Just add the part that the president decides how much, at the beginning, before it starts, sees how many.
Like I could ask
the
Vin,
president will,
if he could-
yes, Vinnie, how many
how many
people we have on the
people-
list, and the
if
president
it's
will set the
25 people
time
over,
before
right.
public session starts for each speaker.
I think you can, so you can refer that back for the nitty gritty. Yeah, absolutely. And we can make sure that's all in there, but that gets it up and running for January.
Okay. So, do we have a second? I'm sorry.
Yes, I second.
Oh, got it. Any other questions, comments, concerns regarding this? Roll call. Vote, please.
Mrs. Shrem?
Yes.
Mrs. Seward?
Yes.
Mr. Olansky?
Yes.
Mrs. Mendez?
Yes.
Mrs. Strafasi?
Yes.
Mrs. Piernick?
Yes.
Mrs. Rosato?
Yes.
Mr. Petruno?
Yes.
And Mrs. Amster?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Nice.
I have
We have questions.
You got it?
Oh, that's right.
There you go.
Okay. Mrs. Gabazon, I would need to know probably more specifically what your question is, but to answer your question generally, every grant that comes in is approved by the district. So, and it's approved also on an agenda. So Mike, it would flow through you, and then every grant that happens occurs, and it just happened, was it last month? Just happened on last month's agenda. So if there's a specific question, or one that you got a question on, I'm happy to dig into it for you. I don't have the list in front of me right now.
Can I
Was
ask a
the-
question? I'm sorry, on that. I'm sorry. The question on that is, so if, who votes on where that money, so the money is collected, who decides where that money is allotted? I'm just curious.
So the foundation goes through the grants, and they sift the grants off into the yeses and the nos, and then all the yeses are then taken and given a look by Mr. Balone.
Good?
You're good.
Okay.
Yep.
So just to be clear, when I review the grants, it's not, my look at the grant is to ensure that the grants are not something that the district would ordinarily fund through the local budget, and also aligns with the, in this case, the MEF's mission for innovative things that they're bringing to the district that are supplemental, again, other than things that we would ordinarily purchase through the local budget. So specific resources, Mrs. Gabazon, I would need an example of that if it's something other than a tangible item. Then after my review, I am not the approve or deny stamp. I am basically saying that this either qualifies or does not qualify for something that is either innovative or something that the district would or wouldn't provide. Then the MEF, as their own entity, they actually conduct a meeting, and then they provide the approval or denial stamp. So it gets a first sift through me from my lens, but then they actually, they're a separate entity, and then they either approve or deny.
Annette?
I have a hypothetical. I'm just trying to, come up with a scenario. So I was moved by the communication boards that Scope provided this year. Was there any type of discussion within the special ed community that was the most critical and crucial tool that the special ed community would benefit from? Like, where was that? How was that decided?
I can't speak to that piece.
Yeah, I can recall Dr. Blair relaying that people were interested in communication boards, but without having Dr. Blair here to answer that question, I don't know. I don't want to suppose. I have no idea, but I can certainly ask her where the.
Yeah, that's why I want to reiterate it was a hypothetical. It wasn't specifically the communication boards. It was just something that came to mind quickly.
Although, yeah, well, I'm sorry, Bonnie, did I misunderstand your question? Because I thought, like, I thought you had mentioned, I didn't think you were discussing actual monetary donations. I thought you were talking about items, like, as they would pertain to curriculum and things like that, like who's vetting those things? So, like a resource.
So are you asking specifically, like, what is the process from beginning to end? I'm actually interested in that as well.
Yeah, and just a side note, I'm sorry, Mr. Bloom, the approval is coming from the foundation that's donating it? Is that what, did I understand you correctly?
The approval of the actual grant, they
how foundations
they
typically
fund
work.
it, so they would ultimately approve it.
Okay, I think I'm misunderstanding. Okay, they are approving whether or not they would donate the fund. I was expecting, I thought we were just like pertaining to on our end, like once it comes to the district, who's vetting it, you know, like, so for instance, there's a resource. Who vets the resource to say this is permissible in the classroom, or this is not something we can have the children, you know, looking at? Like that, that's the way I understood it.
So, being that we have new members here, here's what should happen. Now that I understand it's the SEL portion of what you're asking about, yep, I will go back and pull that entire grant apart and report back to the board in January.
Dr. Hibbs, you have an answer. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no,
He's
it's okay.
writing.
I can't write and talk. Okay. I don't think Mr. Finn's is still here. I just want to very respectfully say that we are absolutely not a failing school district in any way. DeFino actually just got blue ribbon. And as far as lawsuits go, I'm actually going to bring that to executive session for you, because I want you to see where we were before Dr. Blair came and where we are now. And it is a very stark decline. And I'm just talking about the sheer number. So I will bring that back to you. That was also not accurate. Dana, thank you for the kind words. Dana's still here? Right. Thank you for your kind words. I appreciate the shout outs to both Kathy and Mitch. I'll let them know. That was very kind. And as far as backpacks go, so I just want to tell you what happened and why this administrative decision was made. So as far as backpacks go, Old Middle is set up very differently than Memorial. For landscape, Memorial does not carry backpacks in any way, shape, or form. You've never heard anyone from Memorial in my time come up and complain about backpacks. Backpacks were a concern, coming out of COVID, because we did allow them during COVID. Going back into this year, Mrs. Nowacki bought string bags for each and every kid, and then she reformed all of the textbooks and cut down on the notebooks so that the kids are carrying manageable things. And we made this administrative decision because, A, I don't think it's appropriate, and neither is Mrs. Nowacki or the other administrators in that building, for every child to carry a bag. A, it's a big bag. I don't know what's in it. And, we know the world that we live in, and take the world that we live in and put that to the side, because we all know, unfortunately, what happens in some school districts. There's also other things I can't see. I can't see alcohol that may be hidden. I can't see any other things that might be in a book bag. So if the child has a smaller string bag to carry their stuff, it's just a safer call. Old Middle, if you haven't ever been in it, was built as an open building, and it was retrofitted with walls. So it's not built like Memorial. So a lot of those rooms are oblong, they're odd shaped. So there's just not a lot of extra room. So we made the administrative call that we were absolutely not going to have book bags. And what happened was any child that had a medical reason to have a book bag, we allowed it. Mrs. Nowacki has, I think the approximate number is 10 children that needed to carry the book bag. There are a lot of places in this world where you're not allowed to bring a bag. There are a lot of other school districts that do not encourage or allow kids to walk around with book bags. But I just want you to know why we made that administrative call.
We're not going to have a back and forth right now, but if you'd like to get up, if you want to come to the next meeting, you could.
I'm happy to talk to you after.
Is, so is security the driving factor there with the backpacks then? Is that?
I think there's a couple different factors, security being one of them, sure. The simple adding of space into the hallway, the adding of space into the classrooms, the fact that we allow the children to put their pencils or their pencil cases into the string bag, which is a place to carry, the fact that we cut down on books. So the reality is, for this conversation, if any parent has a legitimate reason for a child to carry a book bag, all you have to do is reach out to Mrs. Nowacki, and she'll help you navigate this process.
To be honest, I didn't even realize that was, I mean, I remember, I went to the old middle school. I was there for 7th and 8th grade, and I mean, we had backpacks. It didn't even occur to me, you know. I don't know. I can't see this, like, you know, getting in the way. Like, you know, you put it under your chair when you sit, but security, I could see that being a concern.
They don't fit under the chairs either, Mr. Paterno.
Well, whatever. I mean, next to you, you know. I mean, it's a book bag. It's not a suitcase.
Some of them are, though.
Contribute to this discussion. I have 2 children in Old Middle, a 6th grader and an 8th grader, and both of their string bags are already broken.
Plus, the string is not easy on your shoulder.
Yeah, it's like giving something more fragile to an already like lackadaisical person that doesn't really have that much respect yet for the integrity of a string holding everything together. Do you think that the possibility of a smaller backpack would be something that Ms. Nowacki would consider?
I don't think so. I think that we got to a spot where we think we're in the safest spot possible.
Yeah. How about an at-home drawstring bag? Like if there's plenty of companies that. Yeah.
I'd have to talk to Mrs. Nowacki about, you know, but I'd also be happy to talk to her about.
This is why Abby wanted me to get elected, by the way. This is the exact reason to bring back backpacks. This is all she wanted me to discuss. So I'm doing it on her behalf as well, because the drawstrings actually bring a little more stress to their everyday life, from going to their lockers between classes, or if they don't have enough time when they arrive at school to go to their locker to prepare. I know it's just the beginning of getting them ready for high school and the years beyond to, you know, delegate which books have more importance, but it's something that seems to bother a lot of them. So
yeah,
I'm just
I mean, I could see that.
trying.
Especially with young, you know, if you have any kind of, you know, I could see that. And even, I don't think those drawstring bags, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they're just 1 cinch at the top. I don't think they have compartments. I know, like, my kids, you know, every compartment has, you know, one's dedicated for pens and pencils, the other one.
Yeah, the Hydro Flask takes up the whole backpack.
Yeah, right? And then don't forget my daughter with the fidgets, but.
Oh, Jessica?
Can I just say that because you, Aldo, you mentioned the backpacks, they're not luggage. I do have to say that one of the trends, especially coming from COVID, are those rolling backpacks. So they are bigger. They have wheels and everything, so it kind of is a little bit like luggage. Yeah. So there needs to be some sort
I could
of
definitely see needing some kind of parameters,
yeah.
but I mean, not allowing backpacks, that just didn't even occur to me. I mean, I went, when I was in that school, we had backpacks, and it was, you know, I mean, the school didn't get bigger, so, you know, how can.
But you said you went there when it was 7th and 8th grade, and now it's 6th, 7th, and 8th?
Right.
I just don't know how many
But we also didn't have this school.
Right.
So
it could be.
Jessica?
Some other districts have small, clear backpacks. They're a little bigger than strings, but they hold up, so I don't know if clear backpacks would be a good solution, but maybe that's something to talk to Ms. Nowacki about.
That's what the big stadiums do, I know, because you're restricted and it has to be clear.
A little concert.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I also, you know, especially, I mean, I have 2 daughters. They're not quite at puberty yet, but I would imagine at one point you have to start carrying you know, like feminine hygiene things, I wouldn't want that in a clear bag.
No, you put it in like a cosmetic bag that you, I don't know. That's middle
I'm
school
just saying.
trend
No, we wouldn't.
going
Yeah,
on,
we
right?
wouldn't want that either.
Any other, are you done answering?
Yeah, I'll take the concept of the clear back, sure.
Do you have to answer any more questions, or are you good? I think that was it.
The data for ESY, Carrie Jankowski.
Yeah, no, I wrote down all of Carrie's, did the parameters change for entrance over the years, consider split of literacy and math and the specialized programs. Carrie, we definitely do have those specialized programs, but I'll take that back. I have no doubt that we're gonna be able to have a compromise to figure out how to add more days and to add it into the right spot so that at the end, we're not having a drop off in attendance either way. That's our goal.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, just one last thing, if possible. And I apologize if it was discussed at the last meeting. I wasn't able to attend, but the updated data for ESS regarding the fill rates and everything.
January.
Okay, so
Yep.
this upcoming.
Yeah, we're gonna have a
Perfect.
presentation, Mr. Balone, January.
Awesome, thank you.
You got it.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Jill?
I totally get, as a parent who did have kids go through MS, that has one in MS, with the whole backpack thing. And I also, I feel for the administrators everywhere, including my school district, because I know what you're saying, although like when you were there, they were in that, you were able to carry backpacks. And in my school district where I work, I can't even bring a pocketbook into a football game. Just because every school district, it's so hard because you're trying to make the right call so that the worst case scenario, that you don't have the public coming at you saying, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? And sadly enough, just this morning, I had 2 students in my room and we were like talking and like how I could fortress my office even better. And I bought out of my own pocket additional blinds so that on top of what the school issued so that maybe people couldn't see in. So I don't know, I totally get where everybody's coming from, but and I'm sure Christina has the same thing, where you work, like then when you're like in it and you see these kids doing security drills, it's a hard call either way. That's all I want to say.
Well,
it really is.
But it's also, and I know because I also work in the school, in the middle school, but if the kids, the truth of the matter is if the kids want to bring in a weapon, they want to bring in a vape, they want to bring in drugs, they want to bring in anything, they bring it on their body, they have it taped to themselves, they're in their sock, they're going to get it in, even in the drawstring bag. That's the bottom line. But I appreciate the efforts being made to keep our kids safe. I just know that working in a middle school capacity in New York, they get it in, regardless of a backpack or not. So unfortunately, that's the crazy world we live in.
Do you have metal detectors? I'm just honestly just curious. Do you have metal detectors? No.
No, and we have an open door policy.
Yeah, we don't
Just
have them
doors
either.
open all day. Come on in.
Do we have metal detectors
And
in our school?
About safety.
Yeah, we gotta be careful about what we discuss publicly.
Okay. Yeah, and only because, like I said, I mean, Jill, I completely agree. There's definitely no, one correct answer.
no, that's why I'm on both sides with
Yeah.
the drawstring bags and one daughter. Whew, I think I
But
went through like 6 drawstring
hearing,
bags.
like,
1 year. Yeah.
Then you hear kids bringing in alcohol, and you're like, wow, that didn't even occur to me. But but again, like Christina said, bag or not, if they want to bring the alcohol in, it's coming.
I think that I understand that the need or the want of parents to, carry a bag. But the reality is, look at the world we live in. Do we want to have, they come in, they go to lockers, right? Why would we want any opportunity for anyone to carry around something all day when we don't have to do that, if we can figure out a way to do it differently? So imagine a parent standing up here at this microphone saying, Dr. Hibbs, you allowed backpacks, and someone brought a gun to school, or a knife, and someone got hurt or killed. Then all of a sudden it's a very different conversation.
On the opposing side, though, for the student who struggles with scoliosis, what if that leads to surgery?
So,
there's
we actually talked to the school doctor about that, and honestly, the first thing they'll tell you not to do when you have scoliosis is to carry a book bag. That's our school tradition.
I think the other concern, would also be, have we, whatever the measures were that have been implemented, and I'm sure, you know, Dr. Milwaukee did it with the best of intentions and, you know, that, hoping that that would be the best, you know, strategy for the school. But do we know, like, you know, how effective it is? Like, is there enough time? I remember when Ms. Grant came and spoke to us, and if I am not mistaken, it was something about running to the lockers and not having time in between. And listen, it's stressful when you're a kid and you have 3 minutes to get from class A to class B, and you got to run to your locker to get something. And, you know, so in that regard, I see that aspect also. I think this is definitely something that should be.
Could we maybe discuss this in executive when we are discussing things that, you know, in regards to security?
Yeah, it's definitely a
Yep.
closed session discussion as to the security component.
Right.
Dr. Hibbs, did you finish answering?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Any other questions? Good. I'd like to make a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second? Susie? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, good. See you next week, a few weeks. Bye.